In 1,000 years, when archaeologists are sifting through calcified McDonald's signs to dig for remnants of our lost civilization, I hoped that they crack open a slab of slate to find a perfectly fossilized box DVD set of Chrisley Knows Best. Reality TV genres have expanded into a smorgasbord of options. There's game shows, dating shows, survival shows, cooking shows, real estate shows, bored rich lady shows, and more. The most delectable of them all are the variety shows. These titles follow one family unit and their interpersonal drama over the course of years. And these tend to fall into two categories: filthy rich families, like the Kardashians or the Chrisleys, and families in poverty, like 1,000-Pound Sisters, which sensationalize the effects of poverty that many Americans face without ever addressing the root causes of these issues, often implicitly or obviously blaming, shaming, and mocking their subjects for their lifestyle, all while profiting off of them, like some kind of poverty sideshow routine. But like everything, this has roots. The term white trash and its corresponding stereotypes probably originates in the United States in the early 1800s. At this time, the best land had already been taken by plantation owners, so the poorest voluntary immigrants had to settle on the worst possible land available to white people. They settled on land that was sandy, swampy, or covered in scrub pine, basically not suited for agricultural farming, and thus not profitable and offering little to no social mobility to those families. Many of them settled in the mountainous regions of Appalachia and the marshier areas of the rural South. In the mid-19th century, poor white trash were treated as a curiosity. The upper and middle classes believed they had inherent physical and social defects that were inherited through blood. Middle and upper class Southerners saw low-income whites as inherently immoral, uncivil, even criminal due to their unkempt appearances, even though their appearances were largely the result of poor diets, no access to personal grooming. They were condemned by the larger community at first sight, with no thought given to the conditions that were responsible for their appearances. And if you were a person of color on top of that, you were treated with even more derision. All these stereotypes about the poor stoked disgust and disdain in the upper middle classes. They were also used for humor and entertainment. In 1854, secessionist and political satirist George Washington Harris was traveling in southeast Tennessee when, according to him, he met a local farmer whose name was William Sut Miller, who apparently inspired him to write the short story anthology of Sut Lovingood, which quickly became his most successful work by far. Sut Lovingood is a caricature of rural Southerners. He considers himself to be a natural-born darn fool and enjoys drinking whiskey, chasing girls, and is quick to pull chaotic, violent revenge on anyone who crosses him. Much of the series' comedy comes from the Southern people's poor hygiene, their constant injuries from violence, and malnutrition, and physical oddities like extra fingers and toes. Also, their revenge-fueled pranks and their exaggerated accent. George Washington Harris portrayed the rural poor as uneducated, destructive, and morally unreliable. And while these stories specifically focus on white-class conflict, his mockery of poor whites reflects his political and social stance, which was central to pro-slavery ideology, the belief in a natural hierarchy. This connection isn't surprising for old GWH, considering that he was a very open proponent and supporter of the South's secession from the Union and its ability to continue to own slaves. Slavery apologist Daniel R. Hunley's book, Social Relations in Our Southern States, published in 1860, includes a chapter titled White Trash. He used the existence of poor whites with, quote, bad blood to argue that genetics and not societal structure was the problem, and therefore slavery was justified. He called poor Southerners the, quote, laziest two-legged animals that walk erect on the face of the earth. He described them as lank, angular, bony, and with a sallow complexion, an awkward mannerism, and being naturally stupid. KKK leader Randolph Shotwell agreed, describing them as, quote, a distinct race of people, thriftless, uneducated, unthinking beings who live little better than slaves. By separating the lower classes as inherently inferior even a separate race from the planter class, these Southern writers protected the idea that power-holding white people were superior to all other races. It was also a scare tactic against abolitionists, suggesting that the slave system created stability by giving the poor Southern whites a position above someone else and allowing the planter class to maintain their grip on commerce and culture, which clearly you don't want to trust that to the violent and dirty and unpredictable poor. And you may be thinking, what does this have to do with reality TV? The TLC classic, Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, follows the life of 6-year-old Alana Thompson and her family in McKinter, Georgia. The show launched in 2012, 1 year after Alana and her mom, June, were featured on Toddlers and Tiaras and won over the audience.
This is my crazy family. I have 3 sisters, Talkin the craziest, Hannah's the pregnancies, and Jessica my favorite, like my BFF. The boss's family is Mama.
Mama! My name is Mike. My nickname is Sugar Bear. Sugar Bear, my baby daddy.
The show's launch marketing really focused on the crazy redneck family and their antics. The promo featured Mama June making a lot of crazy faces, Alana prancing around pageant stages in revealing outfits, and Anna's teen pregnancy. To market the launch, TLC sent out a watch and sniff card that featured scents like cheap perfume, human BO, and burnt spaghetti. The show is a comedy, and most of the jokes, in my opinion, are at the expense of the family. The family is extremely Southern and extremely rural. McKinter was home to only 718 people in 2022. And they proudly call themselves rednecks. In the mid-2010s, the redneck lifestyle became a really popular topic for reality TV. Google searches for rednecks spiked in 2013, 1 year after Honey Boo Boo and Duck Dynasty dropped, and the same year as Buck Wild. There are a lot of stereotypes around country people that are pretty much in line with what GWH wrote about Sut Lovingood. The gags in Honey Boo Boo are all pretty much covered under the same 4 things. They're rudeness,
Those judges were nuts.
an indecipherable accent,
We got too much estrogen in the house. Need some testosterone.
hygiene, and a more modern issue, obesity. Something to keep in mind for this analysis is that this is reality TV and not reality, but the producers set up these moments. They choose how to capture them, how to edit them, and how to market them. The family's lack of decorum and penchant for mischief is a big source of comedy in the show. The producers love to show the kids acting up in public and the shocked and confused reactions of the people around them. In season 1, episode 2, after Alana allegedly loses a pageant because the judges called her unrefined, June decides to hire an etiquette coach for the girls.
Etiquette class, I learned nothing because it wasn't fun. Etiquette classes are for stupid people.
The gag is that the etiquette coach is appalled at the girls' lack of table manners and their unladylike way of speaking and leaves in a hurry, even forgetting her car keys on the way out. Family's accents and ways of speaking are also poked fun at. It seems also like the show's creators saw a lot of potential for merchandising here, and you can really see it in the episode titles that were used to promote the show, like Time for Sketty, Mo Butter, Mo Better. I remember the term sketty floating around at the time that this show launched when I was younger. In fact, the inspiration for the show's name comes from Alana's initial appearance on Toddlers and Tiaras, where she says,
The other guys must be crazy if they think they're gonna be me, Honey Boo Boo Child.
which went viral at the time. And virality in the 2010s was a big deal. You could be on Ellen or get your own show. The other frequent gags, lack of hygiene and obesity, come across a little more sinister to me because they're issues that are very directly linked with poverty. The first is lack of hygiene. The show is full of gross out gags at the family's expense and are sure to cut in every burp, fart, cough, or sneeze that happens, I guess, during any time filmed during the show. They show June's neck crust Pumpkin's rancid feed. According to a nonprofit called the Hygiene Bank, hygiene poverty is not being able to afford the everyday hygiene and personal grooming products that most of us take for granted. So things like shampoo, laundry detergent, tampons, or toothpaste. And hygiene poverty can have very serious effects. People avoid going to work or job interviews. They limit their social interactions out of shame or fear of being mocked. And so it limits their access to education, work, and other routes out of poverty, continuing the poverty cycle. Not to mention the health risks that come with limited access to things like toothpaste and antibacterial soap. In season 1, there's a plot line about Alana, Pumpkin, and Chubbs, who were all children, and June, doing a weight loss challenge over the summer.
My mama weighs the most in my family because she's fat. True.
But the gag is that the girls are really struggling to lose weight. A big reason for the link between poverty and obesity is the lack of access to fresh foods. June is an extreme couponer, and in season 1, episode 8, she reveals that she feeds her entire family on just $80 a week. That's about $13 per person per week. Even in 2012 dollars, that's not much at all. McIntyre, Georgia is also in a food desert, which if you don't know, means it's a low-income area where residents have limited access to affordable fresh foods within a reasonable driving distance. So if the grocery store is an hour round trip from your house, and your family can only spare the time or afford the gas for one trip every few weeks, you're gonna buy packaged and pre-prepared foods that are going to last and feed your family until you can make another trip. You can see this with June's stores of foods and household goods on shelves throughout their house. In that same episode, there's a moment in an interview with June where she expresses concern because there aren't as many deer in the area as there used to be. So they're not getting as many roadkill calls as they used to, which was their primary source of fresh meat. Basically, someone would hit a deer on the road and call it in, and the family would go and scoop it up and use that meat to feed themselves. This moment is quickly moved past, but I was really struck by this. The show frames June's cheapness as a quirky personality trait and not the result of living in the poverty-stricken rural South. It's played for laughs, but I think if this moment wasn't edited with quirky music and quick cuts, it would have a very different tone. I think the producers were going for a kind of Addams Family message of, despite all their bizarre and disgusting behavior, they really love each other, which is kind of condescending, but to me, the proportion of mocking moments to sweet ones just does not convey that. Here Comes Honey Boo Boo was controversial with TV critics. Many criticized its exploitation of poverty, its penchant for the grotesque, and the low-hanging fruit fart humor. But even while these critics were panning the show for exploiting the family, many of these critics themselves clearly failed to empathize with them or even see them as people. Many felt that the family's obesity, lack of hygiene, and poor manners were moral failings that they were spreading to the rest of the world to destroy its social fabric. In 2012, Tim Goodman at The Hollywood Reporter wrote the following in his review of Honey Boo Boo.
So here's the deal. You know the show is exploitation. TLC knows it. Maybe even Mama and HBB know it deep down in their rotund bodies. Here Comes Honey Boo Boo is a car crash, and everybody rubbernecks a car crash, right? It's human nature. Yes, except that if you play that card, you also have to realize that human nature comes with the capacity to draw a line, to hold fast against the dehumanization and incremental tearing down of the social fabric. Even if this never-ending onslaught of reality television suggests that's a losing effort, you can say no to visual exploitation. You can say no to TLC, and you can say no to Honey Boo Boo, child.
But this criticism of Honey Boo Boo didn't keep the viewers away. In fact, its premiere episode drew 2.2 million viewers, and later episodes drew nearly 3 million people. It topped the cable charts and was a huge ratings win for TLC. Honey Boo Boo was one of the first reality shows to really be fueled by social media anti-stan culture. People had hate-watching parties and mocked and maligned them for their weight and their trashy behavior and their disgusting hygiene. Much at the time, there seemed to be a level of genuine anger and malice toward the family, especially June and Alana. People seemed to feel that the family was in part responsible for the destruction and public grave dancing of common decency. How fun. And you could argue that by being on the show and agreeing to all the prearranged hijinks, that the family set themselves up to be laughed at, mocked, humiliated, in exchange for consistent income. And while I would say that the children really didn't have much choice, that argument isn't entirely unfounded. When the producers engineer these silly or gross moments, their end goal is to engineer our, as in the viewers, reactions. For ratings, for hype, for funding. They're not trying to create stereotypes. They're just aiming to profit off of the stereotypes that already exist. And I think that it's important to analyze how we as a society and individuals perceive and thus can be engineered by the media that we consume. Right now, in an era where income disparity is on the level of, and some years surpassing, the Gilded Era and the Great Depression, we simultaneously live in a world of endless and constant media consumption. And all the media has to do is give us a target that isn't the 1% of Americans that are hoarding 30% of our wealth as a nation. And we little folk at the bottom are quick point fingers at each other. And as we've seen, it's really not very hard to dehumanize another group of people, whether that be a poor Southern family or an immigrant from another country. And I think it's important that we remember, while the scapegoat may not currently look anything like us, that can and will quickly change. In the 1890s, slavery was gone and Reconstruction was over. Jim Crow laws had, on the surface, stabilized the racial hierarchy with black people at the bottom. Upper and middle class whites were somewhat satiated. The Panic of 1893, where the greed of railroad companies led to overexpansion and widespread loan defaults, caused bank failures, massive unemployment, and labor strikes. Elites, of course, blamed the new immigrant populations, like the Italian and Jewish people, for social breakdown, and were quick to racialize them as separate from white Americans. But for rural areas, where the coal wars were kicking off with a series of armed labor conflicts in Appalachia, spurred by economic downturn and the exploitation of workers, there were fewer new immigrant populations to blame for the social unrest. Around this time, the American eugenics movement was really taken off. They used the ongoing racialization of, quote, socially inadequate and mentally deficient, end quote, poor rural people to successfully lobby the government to conduct mountain sweeps, where local sheriffs or other officials would drive into mountain villages, particularly those in the Blue Ridge region, Appalachia, had forcibly removed people. They would take them to state institutions like the Western State Hospital and Lynchburg Colony, where they would be forcibly imprisoned and sterilized for no reason. Families in that area were also actively displaced, so their land could be stolen and used for development or the creation of national parks. This is a story we've all heard 1,000 times before in American history. Forced removal and annexation of Native Americans, urban black neighborhoods stolen and destroyed, the incarceration and deportation of immigrants. Each of these instances were and are, in part, defended under the false idea that these groups are inherently lazy, violent, dangerous, or poor stewards of their own property, whatever that means. Because we cannot unite together as a society and fight for a country that benefits us all if we're too busy fighting amongst each other. So, when an entertainment program is built on profiting from stereotypes against one group of people and labels itself as reality TV, I think we should all choose to be aware of our own reactions. Not judgmentally, not even with guilt necessarily, but empirically, for the sake of maintaining control over our own brains and emotion. Politicians and media companies are fighting for it like the last piece of bread. Rural people, poor people, like any population, are not perfect. They may not all vote or act politically on the right side of history. They may not all have the right opinions with the proper dress or social niceties. But this doesn't necessarily mean they belong at the bottom. No one belongs at the bottom. That essentialist view of class is the very same they used to defend slavery in the 19th century and used to defend the cartoon supervillain wealth hoarding of today. Our country is literally being run by Scrooge McDuck. With the rapidly increasing income disparity in the USA, many of us will find ourselves much closer to poverty than we'd previously thought.